Lady Whistledown has all but declared me ineligible.
Whistledown.
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 In Bridgerton, with all the glittering ballrooms and dazzling gowns, it is easy to believe that power only lies in having a high title, a good fortune, or an advantageous marriage. Power is visible, inherited, and almost always something inherently male. However, Lady Whistledown has proved that there is another, very subtle but effective way to hold power. Her character is mostly understood to be a twist or some kind of narrative device, but this actually undersells who she is. She is not merely a narrator or a gossip monger, but the quiet architect of Regency society's rise and fall. Her words determine whose reputation survives, whose collapses, and whose future is quietly rewritten overnight. Long before her identity is revealed in the show, she has become one of the most powerful characters because she controls the only thing that truly matters in society, and that is reputation. She influences the story long before anyone can even realize who is holding the pen. Having said that, don't you worry, we will spare you of any season 4 for this video. So without wasting another moment, let's explore exactly how she has been and will still remain the force behind Bridgerton.
I received a letter earlier this week from Lady Whistledown.
Lady Whistledown actively uses narrative as leverage. It might seem shallow in some ways, but society in Bridgerton is obsessed with gossip. Who danced with whom, who was seen entering which carriage, who failed to secure a proposal before the season ended, who snuck away with whom to have a cozy moment together. These details are treated as trivial, yet they determine lives. In such a setting, marriage is not always for the sake of love, and reputation is the fragile foundation that determines each person's future. No one understands this ecosystem better than Lady Whistledown. A single paragraph from her pamphlet can undo months of careful courting or rehabilitate a seemingly scandalized family. What makes her powerful is not just the access to information, but her authority. The Ton does not merely read what she pens down, they go as far as adjusting their behavior based on what she writes. Everyone watches what happens around them, but she knows how to organize that attention. This control is not merely performative, because she uses it to expose hypocrisy and reveal the truth that often gets buried amidst hushed whispers. From the very beginning of the show, Lady Whistledown is actually the only female figure with real agency. Even Queen Charlotte is bound by rules, despite her being at the top of the food chain. Lady Danbury, for all her wit, still had to spend most of her years trapped in a marriage with a man she loathed. In the world of Bridgerton, marriage prospects, social perception, and male approval form the trinity that decides the hows and whats about women. Due to her anonymity, Whistledown manages to bypass all three and become virtually untouchable. Make no mistake, she is neither a passive commentator nor a mere observer who documents daily life in the Ton. One of the clearest examples that proves this perspective comes in the very first season, when Daphne Bridgerton was nearly forced into marriage with Nigel Burbrook after he attempted to coerce her into a compromising situation. In Regency terms, Daphne's future was effectively over. It was only due to Lady Whistledown that she managed to escape the dreaded match, because the revelation in her column flipped the script and made shame change sides. When Marina Thompson's pregnancy threatened to trap Colin Bridgerton in a loveless, dishonest marriage, Lady Whistledown intervened once more, but maybe with some selfishness. The reveal of Marina's condition was cruel in a way, but it prevented Colin from being tricked into a marriage that would have reshaped his entire life. Perhaps the most politically savvy maneuver from the writer came when Queen Charlotte turned her suspicion towards Eloise Bridgerton, believing her to be Lady Whistledown. It was one thing for normal people to be suspicious, but when it came from royalty, it could have had drastic consequences, particularly for a young woman who was already perceived as somewhat unconventional. So, when Lady Whistledown published information about Eloise's association with political radicals, she effectively redirected the Queen's attention because it proved that the former was too impulsive to be the mysterious columnist. While Eloise's social standing was temporarily sacrificed, she was saved from something far worse. All of this proves that Lady Whistledown knows how stories function in her world and when to reveal something for maximum impact. She operates entirely outside the visible power structure, with no title to protect her and no husband to shield her. She does not even have a family name that grants automatic credibility. Her authority is built entirely by herself until the Ton is basically trained to believe that her word is law. The show is actually quite intentional in portraying how deeply this power unsettles traditional authority. Even the Queen, who is probably the only other comparable figure, cannot silence Lady Whistledown. Charlotte's obsession with finding out the person behind the pamphlets makes sense when you realize that, on some level, despite being the Queen, she herself is wary of Lady Whistledown's authority over her own subjects.
My triumph. The diamond of the season has made her match.
She represents feminism without fanfare. Feminist triumph is almost always loud and defiant. Lady Whistledown's brand of feminism is much more muted and subtle. She does not reject the idea of marriage completely. She only refuses to let that consume and define her entire self. She acknowledges how calling women diamonds is both praise and objectification. She openly points out how the playing field is painfully tilted in favor of men, and women are seen as decorations instead of real human beings. This is one aspect where the show diverges from the books. In Julia Quinn's novels, Lady Whistledown is playful and clever, but the series amplifies her role as a force to be reckoned with. Netflix's Lady Whistledown is sharper, more morally complicated, and more ambitious. She does not try to dismantle patriarchy through speeches or protests. She simply documents how hollow the system is in such a way that it automatically highlights how arbitrary the rules are for women. And these do not necessarily make her a saintly figure. She is quite morally complicated, as she causes harm and also reveals injustice at the same time. She is aware of the repercussions of her words and struggles with guilt, as well as the risk of being exposed. It strains her relationship with her to-be husband and her closest friend, but that is the whole point behind her character, because she is not meant to be flawless. She is a woman navigating a lot of power in a world where she was never supposed to have any authority to begin with. Her most glaring act of defiance was the fortune she had earned entirely through her own efforts. In a world where a woman's financial security came from anyone but herself, Whistledown creates her own income stream and proves her understanding of how business works. When her identity is revealed publicly, it does not diminish her power in the slightest, even though no one could have remotely expected Penelope Featherington to have been the person behind those words. The Ton had refused to acknowledge her, but she still influenced society by acting in a capacity that was completely opposed to her public image.
I speak of Whistledown. I know she is in this room.
Lady Whistledown is the true architect of Bridgerton. I remember how Penelope had once expressed how her nature as a wallflower was actually advantageous in some ways, because no one noticed her. These words made sense when she was revealed to be Lady Whistledown. As I just mentioned, Penelope was largely overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed because she did not fit into Regency standards. But as Lady Whistledown, she turns this into power and proves that intelligence and observation can rival lineage and looks. Think about it. A lot of outcomes in the previous seasons have been due to her direct strategic interference. Without her, the Ton would still exist, but would be completely bland. Romance is the central genre of Bridgerton, and Whistledown is not the protagonist in every love story, but she is very much the architect behind them. Daphne and Simon's relationship and eventual marriage were only possible because Whistledown disrupted the false narratives surrounding Daphne's desirability. Colin's future hinged on the exposure of Marina's intentions, which in fact directly paves the way for his own love story with none other than the person we are talking about. This is why Lady Whistledown is not simply a character within the show, but its most important force. Although she occasionally miscalculates the fallout of her words, her flaws do not cancel out her relevance. Power is rarely wielded in a perfect manner, and for what it's worth, Penelope's words have never been intentionally malicious or harmful. The pamphlet where she spoke about Eloise keeping company with questionable people was a desperate act of self-preservation, which bothered her to such an extent that she burned her quill and almost stopped writing. And I like that the show does not glorify her due to her alter ego. It simply points out how she is brave in a way that never gets praised. Her role in the upcoming season has become a bit of an uncharted territory for the writers of the show, because seasons 3 and 4 have been flipped in terms of order from the novels, where Lady Whistledown is very much present for Benedict's story, just not as Penelope Bridgerton. With her identity no longer a mystery, the question is no longer who she is, but what she chooses to do with her voice now that her anonymity is compromised. How will she shape the narrative without the shields that had protected her for so long? Well, if Bridgerton has taught us anything, it is that Lady Whistledown knows how to evolve. And just like Queen Charlotte, we all expect great gossip as the seasons progress. Now tell me, what do you guys think about the reinvigoration of her character in season 4?